In the quiet homes of Chicago's west suburbs, a poison is seeping into the hands of young teens. After taking a ride down I-290 to the west side of Chicago, teens are experimenting with hell's dust and chasing the dragon. Heroin has become an activity too many teens are becoming addicted to and dying from. Studies done by the Robert Crown Center says that 25% of first-time heroin users will become addicted, and 50% of those users will eventually die of an overdose. Just in 2012 alone, 30 people died in DuPage County because of a heroin overdose, and 37 people died in Will County. Heroin is an opiate drug that slows down your heart rate, your breathing, and your circulatory system. One of the most pleasurable states of the heroin high for the person is when they are pretty much just literally like this, floating. And so there's a fine line between a person really getting to their optimal level of being high and overdose and death. The heroin production in Mexico has increased significantly, and compared to the 1970s, today's heroin is 15 times more powerful. So drug dealers are able to build their clientele by giving teens their first hit for free and selling the next for as little as $5, getting teens hooked on the drug. Teens today are more willing to try heroin because it is no longer just in a needle, but is a powder you can snort or smoke. Research shows that a heroin addiction usually starts as a recreational activity or as a substitute for pain medications such as Vicodin or Percocet. Painkillers, just like heroin, are an addictive opiate drug, and many people, after enjoying painkillers, will turn to heroin. There's some things I think that are not meant for human consumption, and injecting things into our veins is one of those things, whether it be heroin or meth or other things. They're just too intense and they kind of take over people's lives. So there's some drugs people can do recreationally. Injecting heroin to your vein is not one of them.
I guess the whole idea of doing heroin I never thought I would do, but when you do it, you don't feel anything. You don't think, you don't feel, you're just free from any worry. After fighting in Afghanistan, battling an addiction to pain medication, and grieving the loss of his father, Chris Rauen started using heroin in August of 2011. Like many first-time users, he started by snorting the drug, but this soon led to shooting with a needle. He calls himself an adrenaline junkie who was searching for the next level of partying. That first rush is what everybody likes, and everybody tries to get to that first rush every time they do it. I mean, you'll try and do 5 bags at once instead of only 1 to try and get that high. After going through rehab at Stepping Stones in Joliet, Illinois, Chris has been sober for 10 months. His track marks remind him of the hard life of a heroin addict who had to steal to fuel his addiction. Chris said even though he didn't always have money for heroin, many young teens did. He said it was shocking but not unusual to see teens sitting in their families' expensive cars at the local pickup spot waiting for their hit of the day. Dealers, they didn't give a shit. I mean, they literally would, well, how much do you want? All right, well, give me your money. End of discussion. Why work in the projects where people are struggling to get money for it when I can work out in the rich neighborhood where everybody's got the money for it? After seeing the dangers on the streets of downtown Chicago, John Roberts, a retired police officer, moved his family to the western suburbs in hopes of keeping them safe. But as heroin crept into the suburbs, his youngest son got introduced to the drug and died of an overdose in 2009. John calls heroin an epidemic and says he will not stop fighting against it until he is reunited with his son, Billy.
Now it's becoming really popular, and kids are more inclined to try something that they smoke. If they've smoked marijuana, a pipe, somebody hands them a pipe, and this is what happened with my son. Somebody handed him a pipe and said, "Here, try this," and he thought it was marijuana, and it was heroin. In Billy's case, he really didn't know what he was doing with this drug. Most kids out here in the suburbs don't. Billy was 19 years old when heroin took his life. As John grieved the loss of his son, he met Brian Kirk, another father who had recently lost his son to an overdose as well. Together they formed an organization dedicated to fighting the war against heroin. Us two dads, Brian Kirk and myself, we just couldn't not do something about it. We knew what it felt like to lose a child. So we decided we were going to do something. We were going to fight back. So we started HERO. HERO stands for the Heroin Epidemic Relief Organization.
You're all heroes. You all showed up.
The two dads held their first event in an open field for about 500 people in Homer Glen, and since then have held countless events. Hero has been successful for 3 years, raising awareness and providing families with support.
So that's what I'm trying to do, is to have a ripple effect in the community by delivering a rather terrible message, a scary message.
With overdose numbers rising, John Roberts helped pass the Good Samaritan Law in June of 2012. Under this law, people can call 911 for medical assistance, and the caller and victim cannot be charged if they're in possession of small amounts of narcotics.
You turn and look at a diamond in a different way, and you see all the new facets. You know, maybe if we just look at this problem a little bit differently, change the paradigm, it will lead us to several new strategies.
Hero has been working hard with the Robert Crown Center to help promote a drug-free lifestyle in a different and progressive way.
The strategies that we had been using for health education and drug prevention obviously weren't working, because if we had a new generation of kids who were trying heroin, then we needed to change our methodology and change the strategies that we were using.
The Robert Crown Center conducted research with Roosevelt University to study heroin users. What they found were gaps in the teens' drug awareness programs, and many teens didn't know what heroin was, what addiction was, and how it would affect their bodies. The slogan, "Don't do drugs," was not working because it was too general. Teens are realizing that all drugs have different effects, something their drug programs didn't tell them.
Well, what we don't tell them is that, of course, when you start out, it feels great. It's great. And you're going to feel super on the drug for quite a while, and then you're going to realize you can't come off it, and then you're going to get sick, and then you're not going to understand why you're sick, and then it owns you, and that's what we don't want to happen.
The Robert Crown Center has realized that heroin is a community problem and has partnered up with local schools to get people talking about the drug. They have built teaching tools for teachers, coach parents on how to talk to their kids effectively, and has come up with interactive ways to educate teens about why and how they should say no to this drug.
We can continue to pretend that they don't experiment and they don't do these things, and then they won't be prepared for it. But rather, we need to help them understand the danger that exists and then help them figure out that it's probably not the best choice because it'll affect your long-term future.
I-290, also known as Heroin Highway, is the fastest way for suburban teens to get into the city and pick up heroin. Every day, more teens are picking up heroin and bringing it back to the suburbs, while organizations like Hero and the Robert Crown Center are fighting this war to stop heroin. For Good Day DePaul, this is Dana Morones.